Welcome to Multi-Unit Mastery Monday on this rainy day for me, and to part 5 of our series on the multi-unit franchising conference sessions that happened a month ago now. And today's session is going to be really interesting. And I know that I say that about every session that we have, but I'm telling you, this was a great conference, full of information and full of share best practices and things that we did not know. And so it was really great. And so today I had planned to discuss two topics that happened on day 2 afternoon. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary of one and a quick guidance, and then we're going to go into the second session. And so the one that I am going to share with you first is a session on the legislative impact on franchises. And I'm going to share a little bit of information and give you some guidance so that you can get further information. And then the other one is going to be about the session. It was a keynote speaking session with Astronaut Scott Kelly, and that was really interesting and something that, things to make you think about, right? So before I get there, make sure that you give me a thumbs up if you are watching this series and you like the information. And if you are in our YouTube channel, please subscribe so that you can not only watch past sessions, but all the future sessions as they come, all right? So legislative impact on franchises. This was headed by the IFA, International Franchise Association, and the group responsible for representing franchisees in front of the government. And I guess I should have more information as to who they are, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a link of how to find them and learn more. Basically, two things that actually three things that they shared with us and a little bit of guidance. So the first one, they discussed the PRO Act bill and that it has already passed the House of Representatives and is still pending, I believe. And they mentioned, or they shared, that if this bill was to pass, that it would create a radical labor law changes that are not friendly to businesses, especially small businesses like franchises. And they actually use the word radical changes. And so I think that it is something important that we need to be aware of, be more knowledgeable about, get educated about, so that we can then have a say about this. He said, however, that he didn't think that this would pass. However, in the $3.5 trillion bill that it is right now being proposed, it has within it a lot of PRO Act provisions. So even if the PRO Act bill in and of itself doesn't pass, a lot of these provisions are in the $3.5 trillion bill. And so very important that you be aware of. And something that he pointed out as an example of what's in that bill is that things that or infractions that may occur due to this new law, they would move from being remedial into punitive. And what that means is, let's say for right now, if you have an issue with, and I'm just paraphrasing, I'm just like, making something up, that an employee's time clock does not work properly and therefore they were underpaid their hours. Remedial will mean that, okay, so if the change or the mistake is recognized, then the amount that was lost is calculated and you remedy it by giving the employee the hours that he is due. So that will be the remedial part. But this particular bill turns issues like this, infractions like this, into punitive, which means that if you make a mistake like that, if there is a technology issue or, in any other type of infraction, now it becomes punitive, which means that it could cost you thousands and tens of thousands in fines because of that infraction. And so this is the type of things that you would find in this $3.5 trillion bill that we as business owners need to be aware of and get involved and get engaged, which is the third thing that I'm going to say about this particular session. And he said, you got to get engaged. If you are a small business owner, if you are a franchisee, or even a franchisor, you must get engaged. And he really gave a very stern warning saying your business and your freedom is at stake when it comes to this particular provisions that are in this bill. And then he made a recommendation. He says that a lot of the reasons why these provisions and these type of laws and infraction punishments are being put in place is because a lot of our representatives are not clear in understanding that a franchise is not a big business, that a franchise is a small business owner, somebody that lives in the neighborhood that might own 1, 2, or 3 little stores, and from there they are able to pay their bills and live their livelihood. And that big confusion, because they think, literally, the people in the White House think that if you own a McDonald's or a Dairy Queen, that you are a part of this big company and therefore deserve or require this this law. And so he said, you should get engaged. You should invite your local representatives to your business. Give them a sandwich, give them an ice cream, show them the car wash, and have them understand that while you are behind this big brand name, that the people behind these big brand names are actually just small business owners in the neighborhood where they live. And so he recommended that, and that you need to get informed and more active in this, or the consequences for our businesses are going to be significant and long-standing. So that's all I'm going to say about that. This is something that some of the things that he shared already has come to pass. And so these are the things that are still to come, and that we may be able to change the path if we get involved. If you would like to have more information about the things and the laws that are coming down the pipeline that may or may not affect your business, please go to community.franchise.org. Again, community.franchise.org. And in there, you will be able to find a lot of information current about how legislative impact, about what kind of legislative impact can happen in your franchise, in your business. All right. And so that's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm certainly not a political or legal expert, but I thought that it was important that at least I mentioned that in this series from the Multi-Unit Franchising Conference. And so get involved and get engaged. All right. So now let's go on to the next session that I wanted to share with you, which was a very exciting session with Scott Kelly, who is a former military fighter pilot and test pilot and engineer, and a retired astronaut, and also a retired U.S. Navy captain. He is a veteran of 4 space flights. Kelly commanded the International Space Station, ISS, on 3 expeditions, and was a member of the year-long mission to the ISS, a year-long mission. As a matter of fact, in October of 2015, he set the record for the total accumulated number of days spent in space, the single longest space mission by an American astronaut. It was almost a year, not quite a year, but almost a year. And currently he lives in Houston, Texas. And now he's part of a speakers round where he goes around and shares his experience. Because obviously we all know that, we always talk about, like, dreaming, what's the thing that's impossible, for many of us, regular people, and it is to become an astronaut, right? Now, he made that happen. He became an astronaut. And so you and I know that to be able to achieve something like that, it takes a lot. It takes, somebody that's extraordinary, which is funny because one of his opening remarks, he said, people don't set to be extraordinary. He says, people set themselves to do extraordinary things. And so as you are, setting yourself and working to accomplish extraordinary things, whether you become extraordinary or not, that will be somebody's judgment, right? And so for sure, having become an astronaut in and of itself is an extraordinary thing to do. But having been someone that was at space the longest, right, almost a year, is amazing. The fact that he was able to make that happen and withstand it for all that time. And so definitely he had a lot of lessons that he shared with us and that are important for us to know. And so the first one is that we should never be afraid of doing hard things. That if we are always choosing to do things that are easy, then the likelihood of us being able to accomplish extraordinary things goes down dramatically, because if it's easy, it's normally not extraordinary, right? And so if you want to be able to accomplish extraordinary things, even if it's for the fun of it, for the life of it, right, then you got to do hard things. In whatever part of life that you want to do, you got to do hard things. And so that's something that is really important. And yes, that means that you got to take a risk on those. But imagine the flavor of life, of how that would be if you took risks so that you could do hard things, so that you can accomplish extraordinary things. That is how you're able to do it. And if you don't do things like that, then then you're going to live not an extraordinary life, right? And so one of the things that you had to do along the way is that is testing the status quo. How many times have we said or had dreams or aspirations of doing things, and we haven't done it because the people around us told us that's not possible, you can't do that, that's not something that you do, that's other people do it, right? And if we hear what other people tell us, right, the status quo, then we would never take that risk and do those extraordinary things. And so we need to definitely test the status quo. Just because somebody says that it is not possible, it doesn't mean that it is not possible. So many things in the world, so many times, and so many people in the world have been able to do things regardless of what other people thought. And many people thought that they were not possible, and yet we did them. And so definitely all of the part of the package of doing extraordinary things is, again, is testing the status quo. And of course, one of the things that he talked about is that you need to focus on the things that you can control. You cannot control other people's opinions, right? You cannot control other people's thoughts and what they say, but you can control what you think. You can control what you do today, what you do tomorrow, what you do the day after. And so that's what you should focus on every day. You may or may not accomplish extraordinary things, but along the way, you are certainly going to be doing amazing things. And so that is the focus that you should have. Focus on the things that you can control and not the things that you cannot. Actually, one of my favorite sayings, and I'm going to butcher it, I believe. And it says something like, I think it's the Serenity prayer, where it says, God give me the serenity, no, the wisdom to distinguish between what I can do and I cannot do, and then the serenity to accept what I can do and what I cannot do, and then the courage to do what I can. Now I see I butchered it. If you know what it is, will you write it down here in the comments so that I can say it the right way? But anyways, it's one of my favorites. It basically says, look be aware of what you are able to do and not able to do, right? Have the wisdom to distinguish one from the other, and then accept the ones that you can't do anything about, right? At this point in time, I cannot become an astronaut, not that I want to, but I can't, and it's okay. I have to accept it. But the ones that I can't change, give me the courage so that I can actually change those, right? Because it is within me. It is within my power to do that. And that's exactly what he did. Throughout his life, in that presentation, you talked about his life and how his becoming an astronaut wasn't and not something that you would have expected of him as a child, but things happen one after the other, focusing on the things that you could change that allowed him to eventually get there and become that and do something extraordinary. And we all have the capability of doing the same thing. So that was really good. And then one of the things that he mentioned, which I thought was probably one of my favorite quotes, he said, how good we are at the beginning of anything. That's my comment. How good we are at the beginning of anything is not related to how good you can become when you learn, when you do hard work, and you are dedicated to the outcome. Again, how good we are at the beginning of whatever we want to do. It is not related at all with how good you can become when you have the knowledge, do the hard work, and have the dedication to accomplish whatever it is that you set to accomplish. And so we all start not knowing a lot. We all start, with little information. We all start with very little skills. But how much we focus on accomplishing whatever it is that we want to accomplish and what we do along the way is what's going to make the difference for us to be able to get there, you know? And so along the way, again, you can choose what is easy versus what you want to be successful at, and you want to do, right? Because sometimes we choose easy, not because it's easy, but because we think that what we really want, we really cannot do, even though we really badly want it. And so, that's something that, he's always, he said that, and it was really insightful. So he says that also there's something else to consider is that things are always ongoingly changing. He says things are always either getting better or they're getting worse. Nothing stays the same because, people change, technology changes, right? Generations change it, information change. Everything is constantly changing. So we can either get better by learning and keeping up and improving, or if we do nothing, we're just getting worse. And so why not choose to get better by staying in the forefront of what's happening and getting the information and the knowledge that we need and apply them so that we can continuously get better, right? And he said, as you do that, you always have to make corrections, right? So sometimes you go one way, and you think that you go the right way, and you realize that that's not the right way. It's okay to make a correction, because if you don't get correction, you might end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then all the effort was for nothing. But if you realize that you are going in the right direction, at the moment that you realize that you got to make a correction, right? And this is all the things that he learned, in all his time as an astronaut up in space. Things were not always smooth, but when things happen, you had to make corrections. And that would allow you to, even though it might take you a little longer or it might be a little bit harder, you eventually get to where you want to go. And so I'm sure that it's not as important and as critical as when you are in outer space to make those corrections, but that is true in our life all the time. How many times do we recognize that we're going in the wrong direction and we don't do anything about it, and here we are faced into the abyss? Let's just make a correction. Let's have the courage to redirect our activity and our focus so that we can go, in the direction that we want to be. And he said he was mentioning how as a young person he just had really bad grades, and yet he became an astronaut. And I remember, this is a personal sharing. I myself had really bad grades growing up. If you talk to my mom, you would know that I was not an A student. As a matter of fact, I had a couple of red grades here and there in my report card every time. And people didn't really know what to do with me, right? And the truth is that those bad grades or whatever times I got in trouble with the principal at the school was not a direct reflection of where I was going to end up with, right? And so the reality is that there's always reasons why things happen the way they happen. And so we need to understand before we are too quick to judge as to somebody's behavior or current results, we need to really take a look as to the why, because you never know if that person that might have the bad grades or the bad behavior could end up becoming an astronaut or the founder of an academy, right? It's funny because I was really bad at school and yet here I am teaching now. But anyways, so again, going back to Scott Kelly's message, he was saying how if you're not the expert, then trust the crew members, the people in your team that are better or the experts at the different things that you don't know. We cannot all possibly be the best at everything we do. There's a reason why in outer space and in most teams, there is always a diversity of people with different skills, so that they can complement each other. There is very few people in this world that have all the skills and knowledge and information and experience on everything that's needed to be able to accomplish a big, extraordinary goal. And so what happens is that you need to assemble a team of people that have the expertise in the different areas. And then when it comes to making a decision on something that is not your expertise, here's when you need to trust the people in your team that do have that expertise. And of course, when you go to outer space, not everybody is equal. Some people are in charge of some parts of the ship, and some people are in charge of other things. And they are certainly not expert at everything, and they had to rely on each other. So the same thing with any extraordinary goal. You have to have that team where you can have a diversity of thought. And he says, as a matter of fact, is having diversity of thought is like a superpower, right? Because then if you have that diversity within your team, then you can be invincible. You can be stronger than any other group that is all the same. And so if you want to have that superpower to accomplish those extraordinary things, then open yourself to the diversity of thought and knowledge and experience, and trust the team members that are experts at the different things so that you can go from point A to point B successfully. And then he also said how leadership is situational. Even though you may be considered the leader of, a team, let's say in outer space, sometimes you have to be directive. Sometimes you have to make a decision and make a call. And then sometimes you need to be collaborative with the team to be able to come up with the best possible solution. And as a leader, you need to be able to discern when you need to be directive and when you need to be collaborative so that you can take care of the team and be able to have everybody accomplish the goal that you set for yourselves. And so he said that, and he said that it is very important because, sometimes it's a matter of life and death and seconds and decisions, right? Maybe when you are working on a business, it might not be life and death, but imagine if you're in a situation where there is danger, which I know a lot of people sometimes are, even within our businesses. And so decisions have to be made with the proper information and knowledge and experience. And so you got to be sometimes directed, but sometimes you need to be collaborative, and you got to be able to distinguish between one and the other. And then he closed his session with two thoughts. And he says, if we can spend a year in space successfully, right, and come back, we can do anything. So every time you have a thought or a dream, which is the other thought he said, if you have a dream, if you can dream it, you can do it. If you can dream it and see yourself in that dream, then you can do it. You just have to make the plan to take the first step, the next step, and the next step, and eventually you can get there. And instead of maybe thinking all the reasons why you can't, take that out of your mind and focus on the reasons why you can do it. And if you do that, you will be able to get there. And so this was a very inspirational session. I really enjoyed it. It was a great way to have the afternoon of the second day. And I would just want to close with the topic or the quote that was my favorite throughout his presentation. And that is how good we are at the beginning of any endeavor. It is not related at all to how good you can become with learning, with hard work, and dedication to that objective at the end. And so with that, just think of how you can get knowledge and information for you to be able to accomplish whatever dreams you have. No matter how bad or knowledgeable you are today, there is no reflection of where you're going to be in the future. Just think about where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You would have never thought that you would be where you are today. And yet here you are. So if that is possible, why not so much more is possible, right? And so having said that, thank you for being with me in this multi-unit franchise mastery. Next week is going to be the part 6 of this multi-unit franchising conference series. It will be the last session. You do not want to miss that one. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel if you are with us in YouTube. That last session is going to talk about succession planning, the importance of it, and the things that you need to consider. So if you are the head of a business and you have any type of assets and a family that you want to leave it to, trust me, you do not want to miss that session. And so in the interest of talking about knowledge and information, I am going to do a shameless plug to my book, The Franchise Fix. If you do not have the Franchise Fix book, you can actually get it on Amazon. It's again part of the learning that you need to be able to be successful in the franchise world. So the Franchise Fix, you can find it on Amazon, or you can go to thefranchisefixbook.com and download it as a gift from me, as an ebook from our platform. All right. Thank you again for being with me here today. And we'll see you next week on the Multi-Unit Mastery Monday, where we're going to do the last session of the series of the Multi-Unit Franchising Conference. And we're going to close with succession planning and the importance for you and your family. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.